Well, good evening, everyone, and thank you very much for jumping on for tonight's session of Fire Safety Essentials, in part with Healesville CFA. So thank you all very much for jumping on. It's probably appropriate that we're having it today after another warm day. So it was a bit difficult actually doing these presentations back in December when it felt like winter, to be honest. So the weather has finally turned it on, and it actually feels like the right time of year to be talking about it. So again, thank you all for taking time out of your busy schedules. So tonight, we've got a decent session for you, actually. We've got a lot to get through, which is very exciting. I've got Callum assisting me tonight. So Callum's going to be watching the chat throughout tonight. So if you do have questions, we'll either address a few of them as we go through the chat, or we'll come to them at the end of this session as well. Because for those of you who have used Zoom, and I should imagine that's quite a lot of you over the last 12 months, you all know that it can be a bit difficult trying to multitask. And yes, I'm a male, so that makes things a little bit harder. I'd also like to welcome on board tonight, we do have Cliff Overton with us tonight from Healesville CFA. So Cliff is the Brigade's Community Safety Coordinator and the mastermind between letting you all know that this is happening tonight. So Cliff, thank you very much in advance for your hard work in getting this off the ground. And we'll also be joined shortly by Graham Banks, who is captain of Healesville CFA and probably fairly familiar to a lot of you. So we will hear from Graham in the next 10 minutes or so, which will be a really nice way to tie that local area information into what we're talking about tonight. Before we kick in too heavily tonight, we do, of course, do a quick acknowledgement of country. So where I'm gathered here tonight and where most of you are most likely gathered as well, we acknowledge the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation. Acknowledge the elders past, present and emerging. So tonight we are having a webinar, which means that it is all very much a one-way communication. So hopefully with any luck, you can all see me. However, I can't see you. So you guys can wave your hands, flap your hands, or do whatever you like, and I have absolutely no idea. Now, the webinar tonight is being recorded. So the key about this, though, is that obviously no one can see you. So it's completely confidential. Nobody can see an attendance list if they go back and watch this recording. And everything that you write in the chat can't be seen either in the webinar and the recording of the webinar. So we do keep it nice and anonymous. We'll try not to yell out anybody's names when they write stuff so that we can try and keep it nice and vague. And try and look after everyone's privacy. So you're all covered on that one, but still it's always worth just letting you know as well, obviously with full disclosure. So if you do need anything or you need to talk to us, you can do so through the chat. Like I said, we'll be trying to answer some of those questions as we go throughout tonight. So to give you an idea of what we're actually going to go through tonight is we are going to go through the local fire risk, because after all, that's the most important information that a lot of you are after tonight, is what's happening in the area. And we also touch on what to expect from fire, especially for those in and around Healesville, especially on the north side or out near the spur. How do you know if there is a fire? Always a great question. Planning and decision making and what we need to factor into our plans, and when we do sit down to write them, what we need to be roughly thinking about. But before we get started through all of this, I do like to get a bit of an idea of who I'm talking to. So we're going to do just a quick check to make sure everyone's got their chat up and running. So in the chat panel, if you guys can just let me know where you're joining us from. Are you joining us from Healesville, a bit further north, maybe in Yarra Glen, could be in Badger Creek. We've already got a Narberthong popping up. Chum Creek, yeah, I should imagine hopefully there's a few Chum Creeks in there. Dandenong Ranges, lots of Healesvilles and Coldstreams. There's a Badger, beautiful, excellent. Healesville, beautiful. So lots of locals and in and around the surrounding areas as well. Okay, Peyton's Gap, beautiful. So we've got a little bit of variety in there today, which is really great. Oh, Launching Place. welcome. So I love doing this because we get a really good overview of who's joining us. Okay, excellent. Thanks everyone for doing that. It lets me know that that's all working properly. It also means that you can hear me if you can answer the question, so that's even better. Although you may disagree by the end of tonight, but we'll see how we go. And of course, to help us get a bit of an idea more about who we're talking to, and of course everyone loves a good poll, I've just got a quick 3-question poll that I'm going to launch here for you all to quickly answer. All you need to do is select your answer, click the buttons. If you're on your mobile phone, you can still hit the buttons next to it, and that will help bring the polls in. So I can see roughly how many people are on tonight, which is excellent. And I know how many people have answered it or not answered it. So we'll try and give you 30 seconds to a minute to get your answers in. And we've got a few of these, maybe half a dozen of them to do tonight as we go through the presentation. It's just our way of trying to engage with you and see where your knowledge is at as we progress through tonight's presentation. Because of course, this presentation, and for those of you who've been to ones in the past, this is a very, very different layout. So at the end of the session, we'll be really interested to know what you think with the new layout that we've gone for this year with Fire Safety Essentials. All right, let's have a quick look at those poll results. So for people living in the local area, about half of you have been here for 10 plus years. So lots of long-term residents. Also tells me that you've been through bushfire before with that. So that gives us really good knowledge there. We also have quite a few people in that 0 to 5 bracket. So welcome to the area. Beautiful part of Victoria. Cliff will be a little biased on that, I'm sure, but it's a truly beautiful part. So hopefully, with any luck, we'll be able to go through a few things for you tonight. All right, Pete, I've taken it down for now with the poll, but we'll try again with the next one. So when I bring it up, let me know if you can see it on the next one. How would you rate your knowledge around fire? Half of you roughly around that medium. We've got a few highs and very highs, so that's great to see, and a few lows and very lows. So you know, if we can give you a few things to take away tonight, then that will be a great outcome. And have you been to a CFA meeting before? 73% of you saying yes. That is, that's quite a high number. So again, at the end of this presentation, when we ask how you find it, we'll be really interested in what you think compared to the old delivery that we used to do, the Fire Ready Victoria session. So thank you all very much for doing that. And we'll get rid of that one. And we'll get straight into it. So let's talk about our local fire risks, because after all, that is what it is all about. So Victoria is one of the most bushfire prone parts in the world. This will come to a shock to absolutely none of you. In fact, we rate in roughly the top 3 across the world. So we're up there, believe it or not, Spain is up there in the top 3 with us. And the other one, which most of you can probably guess, is California. They're right up there with us as well. And we do share a lot of similarities with California as far as climate and the way that bushfire behaves. So it'll come to a shock to absolutely none of you. As you can see on the beautiful pictures up on your screen at the moment, that Victoria does have a number of different landscapes. So we also have the grasslands, we've got bushland, mountainous forest areas. Then we also have the coastal landscape as well. And with that, we get all different types of bushfire behaviour. So obviously when we look around our local area, and keeping in mind that we've got a few people from in and around the general area, it'd be fair to say that we've got a really interesting mix of vegetation in this part. So we certainly cover off grasslands and farmlands with a lot of the paddocks, you know, especially around the Yarra Glen, out past Coldstream on the way out to Healesville and even coming in towards Healesville itself. But we certainly also cover off bushland and mountainous forest. We can see that there's a huge difference between the sort of vegetation that we're seeing in Badger Creek and what we're seeing right in the middle of the spur, for example. So we do have a lot of different types of bush and environment in which we have to keep our guard up, and all of them dry out and behave with fire in different ways as well, depending on the conditions. So it certainly does bring about some challenges depending on the year and depending on how quickly things dry out. which leads beautifully, I think, to looking at seasonal outlooks and how the weather and fire districts justify how we look at things. So we've got fire districts and also weather districts for that matter. Hopefully it'll come as no surprise that we're all in the central area. In fact, this map has been made for you guys because Healesville is one of very few towns actually marked on the map. So I won't even bother asking you which district we're in because you are actually labelled. I think one of the really important takeaways from this, though, is how close Healesville is to that north-central boundary. And also taking into consideration that when you do go away on holidays, especially if you plan on going between now and before school goes back, keeping in mind what you're driving into. So if you're heading up to the Murray, towards the Mallee, the northern country, out that way, it is significantly drier and the risks are far different to what we have in our local area. So being aware of what's happening around you, knowing what district you're in for total fire bans. Obviously, northern country and the likes have total fire bans today. They had them on Monday, whereas we didn't have them down here in central. So it is important that our bushfire skills and knowledge stay with us, even when we do go away on holiday. So let's have a quick look at the seasonal outlook. So I've quickly updated this one. So it runs from February to April. So looking at the next few months ahead. Now, obviously it's been spruiked to us a lot from the Bureau of Meteorology about how we're in a La Nina event. So that will come to a shock to very little of you, which generally does mean above average rainfall. And that's certainly indicated in the chance of exceeding the average rainfall between February and April. So that's the image there on the right. It's not hugely significant. So where we're sitting is kind of in that 60 to 65% chance of exceeding above average rainfall. But what's really interesting, I think, as well, is that we're actually a good chance of exceeding the average maximum temperature as well. So although it's potentially going to be wet, we are still going to have those temperatures like what we had today and especially on Monday. And if we get enough of those in a row, we can certainly dry out our farmlands and the paddocks out there, which does pose still a significant risk to us in what we see for grass fire, bushfires. And again, going back only to Monday, we saw that right near the Calder with that large grass fire that was threatening homes. So we do know that the bushfire season is here. It's just a little bit different, thankfully, to what we had 12 months ago. So local vegetation is always a good thing. And this is about looking specifically around our area. So like what we touched on earlier, I'm sure Graham will touch on in just a moment, is all about the Australian bush and its flammability. And also we can get really technical and start talking about how the aspects will dry out certain parts and how that determines what grows. And, when we look at the east and south sides, we get a lot more ferns and green, lush, wet areas versus the north and west aspects of mountains. But that's very technical for what we're discussing tonight. What we do need to know, though, that our bush is designed to burn. Obviously, we don't like it being in the intensity of what we had last year, but fire in our landscape is a fairly natural thing. So what that means, though, is that when we look at the area and we look at the fibrous barks that we have on some of our eucalyptus and the impacts that has as far as ember attacks, and we'll talk about ember attacks a little bit later on in the session, but we do need to know that our vegetation does determine how quickly and what happens with bushfires, especially on those high risk days. It's also worth keeping in mind when you do travel on holidays, how does the vegetation change and what does that mean for you and where you're camping or where you're staying for your trips? So it is good to be aware of your environment and what it looks like out there. And the pictures there on your screen is pretty reminiscent to the local area in some places. But you don't want to hear about me when it comes to local risks. So this is where I do have the absolute pleasure to hand over to Healesville Captain Graham Bates. Graham, if you want to jump onto your screen there and hopefully unmute, and we'll see your pretty little picture pop up on the screen, if he's there. Otherwise, Cliff, you may be about to jump on. Well, here we go. We're unmuted. Excellent.
How's that? We're going.
We're going. So, Graham, I'm going to throw it over to you. So we're just going to have a quick chat a little bit about the local risks that we have in the local area. What I might do, though, just while you get started, I'm going to pop another poll up here for everyone to have a bit of a look at and see what they think is some of the things that contribute to your area being a high fire risk area. So I'm just going to quickly pop that poll up with bushland, hills, long grass, narrow roads, dead-end streets, limited access. I believe this one's multiple choice, so you can select them all if you like, and I have a funny feeling that that's probably fairly appropriate for Healesville, not to skew your answer. But Graham, if you want to have a bit of a chat to us about the local risks, and on the next slide, I've got a beautiful aerial satellite map of Healesville that you can talk to if you like.
No worries, thanks, Ben. Yeah, well, local fire behaviour. At the moment, it's not really happening. This year, we've had 50.8 mil of rain in the valley. So at the moment, everyone's seeing nice green grass when they look outside. So yeah, you think bushfires, but at the moment, we've had a lot of high winds and whatever. So there's definitely a lot of bark and embers and branches and that on the ground. So everyone still needs to keep cleaning up around their residence. So this year, it's one of them years for the valley. At the moment, fire restrictions don't look like they're going to come in until maybe early February, so which is a bit different for us. The bushlands, well, we all know the bushlands. We're surrounded in Healesville. We've Park Victoria, Melbourne Water, Delp. So we have got a lot of forest around. This year, I don't think, I'm pretty confident, especially up the Spur and up the Myers, nothing will really happen up there. Chum Creek's a bit different. Chum Creek's got a lot of mixed species and whatever. So Chum Creek always dries out before anywhere else around the town. So the Spur, the Myers, no real concern. The Chum will dry out. Long Gully is another valley that leads out of town. It's got a lot of grassland in it, and this year there is a lot of grass. All the farmers don't need all the grass that's growing because it's been such a great year. So we are going to have some quick going grass fires in the area. So Long Gully, and again, once you get right up the top of Long Gully, a lot of mixed species, which is drying out slowly. But yeah, every week we get another shower of rain, and as Ben was saying, we're probably going to have 65% more rain. So we'll just see what happens. With the town, back Ash Wednesday, 09 fires, Healesville's been very lucky in missing out on the major fires. It's always sort of gone round us. Chum Creek or Long Gully copped it first with the 09 fires, which was all the grassland, and that come into the valley every direction. So you couldn't pick where it was going to come from, down direction, east, west, north, south, and over the hill into Chum Creek. And like normal, once it gets into Chum Creek, the fires, the hills will always seem to go around through the Myers, the low end of the Myers Creek, and around Maroondah Dam and keep going. And then they tend to head across Mount Riddle because, yeah, they don't head up the Spur. It's usually still all the green gullies and ferns. So yeah, so it sort of protects up that way, and yeah, across Mount Riddle and keeps on going to wherever it wants to go. The thing for Healesville is you get up to the Myers, you get up especially Chum Creek and that Long Gully. The roads are narrow, they're dirt roads, so a lot of dust and everything. Windy days, a lot of trees come down. So these are areas we have trouble getting into with a lot of traffic coming out when there is a fire. So as everyone says, look at leaving early. So if you've got a problem, you're scared of what's going to happen that day, just leave early. Houses can be rebuilt. So that's the whole point, I think, of people living in Healesville. They love the bush. You insure your house well and you leave early. Just take your essentials and leave. So we can't stop fire. It's it's one of them things. We can protect people and premises and dwellings, but on the extreme days, there's not much we can do. As I said, Healesville has been lucky. It's missed nearly all the major fires. We do have a lot of fires in town and that around, but as you said, our great loss, we haven't had a great loss except up for Chum Creek and Long Gully in 09. What else? I suppose the fire brigade, we run both Healesville and Chum Creek. Chum Creek is a satellite fire station for us. We run 6 appliances, so we're a brigade with a lot of appliances. Our membership isn't bad. We've got another 12 new members just going through their rookies course now, so which will help us a lot. So the brigade has been travelling well. I've lived in the town, you know, some people have been here 5, 10 years. My family's been 5 generations of Healesville, and I've lived here all my life, and I've been a member of the Healesville CFA for 42 years. And I think for the last 16 or 18, I've been the captain here. So I know the area, lived on farms all my life, done a milk round, so I know most of the streets, know a lot of workers that are in the Delp and Parks and Melbourne Water, and I get around the catchment area. We're probably one of the biggest areas for a fire brigade because we take in all those areas. So we range from out towards the Abbey, around towards Dixon's Creek, halfway up to Talangi, all the way to the top of the spur and out to Badger Creek. So our area is a monster area. We have a small industrial area, which is pretty easy to look after. It's right in sort of town, made roads, water mains, everything. Then our residential area is pretty compact in town. Then we start to get out to Chum Creek and Myers where the houses are, and they're spread into the bush a fair bit. We've got the appliances to get there, so we can get there fairly quick. We're probably lucky we've got KC Mount St Leonard's, the tower up above us on Mount St Leonard's, and usually we know the first puff of smoke, we're on our way, and we get there fairly fast before anything gets too large. So yeah, it's a great town, plenty of bush, and I think that's why everyone comes here. So yeah, I don't know what else you'd like to know, Ben.
No, that's sensational. Thanks for that, Graham. Appreciate it as always. I think probably the only last thing that we'll quickly point out on this slide is you touched on that you do have a number of appliances up there, courtesy, of course, of having the satellite as well. But just to give residents a bit of an idea, and look, the data is a little bit old because it is from the census back in 2016. But at that time, there was a bit over 3,000 properties, around 7,500 people in town. Do you want to have a guess at how many properties there'll be now, Batesy?
Yeah, properties, I think we're hitting nearly 10,500 in population now, but I think that the growth is slowing right down now because it's just mainly in the urban area. The Shire's not breaking up much more land at the moment, so we're getting a lot of strata title unit type things, and it's all around Smith Street, Maroondah Highway, and down St Leonard's Road, and I suppose a bit around Alamo Road, and they're fairly high density housing and whatever.
Yeah.
Our trucks, well, we've got a pumper, which is just an urban vehicle. It pumps 3,000 litres a minute. It's got all the BA and everything, which looks after all the structures. That's backed up by a salvage unit, which has got fans and BA, breathing apparatus for all the smoke and that. Lighting, big generators and everything, built-in lighting. So those two virtually stay around town. In the main station, we've got a big 3,000 litre four-wheel drive tanker that does all the rural firefighting. And behind that, there's ultralight, which the brigade built up. So 3 of these appliances are CFA owned, and then the others are brigade owned, so the brigade purchased them. So behind the big tanker, there's a ultralight. It carries 1,000 litres, four-wheel drive little one, which we can send up all the four-wheel drive tracks and all these drives, because a lot of people are putting in too narrow gateways, or they're putting signs over the top of the gates less than 3.6 metres high. They can drive their car in, but we can't get a 3.3 metre high fire truck through. So we've got this small appliance. Out the satellite station up Chum Creek, we've got a medium tanker which carries 2,000 litres of water. It's the modernest truck we've got. It's got all the bells and whistles. It's got 2 pumps on it, high pressure like for your car washes, so we can get into stumps, and then it's got the main pump that pumps a lot of water. And beside that out there is a FCV, 4-wheel drive Nissan Patrol, and that runs around with everything sort of thing, with extra manpower, and if we can't get up any 4-wheel drive tracks, that can go up and investigate what's happening and everything. So the same, it runs up. Most of them will support into Badger Creek, even the pumper, because they've got mains out there, so the pumper needs mains, but the tankers will run them all the way to Narbathong, top of Toolabawong, up to Talangi and that. So yeah, so we've got a big range. We're probably one of the lucky brigades. But as I said, we've bought the specialist appliances, and the CFA's done the standard pumper and tanker.
Perfect. Excellent. Thanks for that. So I guess one of the takeaways from that is if we've got around 3,200 properties and, really 4 trucks that carry water, you've got about a 1 in 800 chance of having a truck at your door if something does start threatening Healesville. So I think that reinforces the message that you do need to prepare and not rely on the fire trucks to be there, because they'll be working around town, they'll be busy, but obviously we cannot ever guarantee that they'll be there during a bushfire. So we do our best, and I'm sure, as you'll attest to, Graham, we are pretty good these days of getting more and more resources into the area nice and quickly, but it still takes time.
Yeah, that's right. And, you've got to think, as you said before, up north, Yea and Alexandra are in total different conditions to what we are. And you've got to realise that we could be heading over the hill to help them out. So again, we've got to rely on other resources coming from Yarra Glen, Coldstream, totally around the area. So yeah.
Excellent. Thank you very much for jumping on there, Graham. Really appreciate it. Great detail. And always good to have that local voice.
No worries.
But let's see what you all thought. So let's share these results just quickly of what you think some of the key contributors are to your area for high risk. And with nearly 90% of the vote, we've got bushland, which really does reflect this sort of area that we live in around the Healesville area. The hills, long grass, all rate highly, narrow roads, absolutely. And, I think that really summarizes well what Graham was talking about. The trucks are fairly wide, 3 wide, 3.3 meters high, roughly. So those narrow roads and overhanging trees, they do present a bit of an issue. Dead-end streets, always a problem area, and limited access and egress rated fairly highly as well. So thanks everyone for sharing your thoughts on that one. And we'll get rid of that one. But let's push on and start talking a little bit about what to expect from fire. Because what we do know, and we keep reinforcing it, that being one of the most fire-prone places in the world, and with half of you having gone through the 09 fires yourself, and the footage that we see on social media in particular these days, and we saw it last year, that we do get a bit of an idea of what to expect in a fire, but unfortunately no fire is ever exactly the same with how it behaves and what you may or may not experience. But there are certainly a couple of things that we will talk about tonight, and the first one is ember attack. So ember attack is one of the biggest causes of property loss that we see during a bushfire. When we talked about the local fuel types and we talked about that fibrous bark coming off the trees, as that burns and it gets sucked up into the column of smoke, these are what can bounce a couple of kilometres ahead of the actual fire front. So this will generally be the first part of the fire that will start dropping in and around your house and has the opportunity to start spot fires, which can obviously cause significant issues if we don't have well-prepared properties. But instead of me talking about it, I'm going to unshare my screen here. I'm going to get Callum to bring up a beautiful animation that we have. The one thing that I will say is that if you do have any memories from past bushfires, then I do recommend maybe taking a couple of minutes break while the video's on, just in case it does bring up any bad memories for you. So jump up, grab a drink, and I'll get Callum to share his screen and we'll take a look at the Ember attack video. Thanks, Callum.
During a bushfire, embers will reach your home long before the flames do. Ember attacks are the most common way that houses catch fire. Embers are burning leaves, twigs, and pieces of bark. They help the bushfire spread by starting spot fires ahead of the main fire front. Short-distance ember attacks happen when leaves and small pieces of bark are blown from burning trees. The intense shower of sparks that forms fills the air with hot, burning embers, which will land on nearby vegetation and properties. The hot embers can easily land and get into your clothes and burn your skin, eyes, and airways. Small fires will start all around you and quickly become uncontrollable. The resulting chaos creates confusion as the fire seems to come from many directions, meaning it will be difficult to make good decisions about your safety. The experience will be physically exhausting and emotionally traumatic. Long-distance ember attack is caused by large bushfires that generate intense heat. As the hot air rises, it forms a column of smoke that sucks in air like a vacuum, increasing the intensity of the fire. The updraft in the column lifts embers, like large pieces of burning ribbon bark, hundreds of meters into the air, where strong winds can carry them many kilometers beyond the fire front. On Black Saturday, embers travelled more than 30 kilometres ahead of the main fire. When these embers land, they often start fires where leaves naturally accumulate, like in gutters, doorways and garden beds. So while you might think you're safe when a bushfire is far away, embers can fall from the sky and land around your home long before you even know there's a fire. But remember, your home isn't the only thing under threat during an ember attack. By the time you realise the danger, it might be too late as escape routes become jammed. Embers can also start fires on roads and block them completely, making late evacuation dangerous or impossible. That's why leaving early, before a fire starts, is always your safest option.
Excellent. Thank you very much for that, Callum. Just quickly jump back and we'll bring up the presentation again. So with ember attack, obviously the key message that we do like to get across is the best way to avoid being involved in ember attack is to make sure that with your bushfire plan, your plan is to leave early. What we really want to avoid is people waiting and seeing. So wait and see what the fire is going to do before they make decisions, because unfortunately the fire can impact you through ember attack before the main fire front does. So it is important to make sure that we do that and that we do prepare our properties to help with ember attack if we do sustain it. Obviously, for those who do have that plan to stay and defend, obviously we always encourage you to have a plan around leaving early. But if you are in that position where you do need to stay and defend, ember attack is one of the first things that you will come up across. And that's when you're out there actively patrolling your properties with buckets of water, the old wet mop and hoses, trying to put out those embers before they do have a chance to develop and become something bigger. And that's where a lot of our preparation comes from, around clearing the gutters, keeping our grass under 10 centimetres and the like. So ember attack is certainly one of those biggest issues as far as property loss is concerned. The other area we want to talk about briefly is radiant heat. And again, there will be a video shortly, so I'll just give you again that warning that if this brings up distressing memories, I do encourage you to take a few minutes shortly to go grab a glass of water and walk away from your computer screen. But radiant heat, unfortunately, is one of the largest killers in a bushfire. And that's because the heat of a fire will impact you before the actual flames do. So unfortunately, radiant heat does really punch out that significant heat that can cause distress on the human body. So again, Callum, I'm going to unshare my screen here and I'll get you to jump on and we'll take a look at the radiant heat video. So please do take a few moments to step away if this does bring up any memories. Give Callum just a moment to bring that up. He's probably quickly changing in between them. Wouldn't be a Zoom presentation without a tech issue. That's all right. Take your time with that one and hopefully we'll have it up in no time at all. I'll just have a quick look. With the video, Adam, that one's only available as part of this presentation at this stage. So unfortunately, there's not a link to this video. It's purely as part of the Fire Safety Essentials presentation. So hopefully that answers that question for you. Okay, Daniel, I think the other question in regards to Badger Creek responding, that one's been answered. Thanks, Cliff, for jumping onto that one. How are we looking, Callum?
Ben, I'm having some issues bringing it up. Bear with me 1 second. I'll try streaming it through the website here.
If anyone else has any questions at this point, feel free to jump on, pop them into the chat. I'll have a quick look and we'll see if we can answer any of them up here, what we've got at the moment, especially while we've got Cliff on board.
How's this looking, Ben? Can you see this?
We have a black screen, so I'm going to throw it over to you and let you do your thing.
Victoria is one of the most bushfire-prone parts of the world. Every summer, bushfires threaten properties and lives. But did you know it's not the flames that kill most bushfire victims? No, it's the radiant heat. Most victims die from the effects of radiant heat long before they're reached by the flames. Radiant heat is what you feel when you sit next to a campfire. The campfire heats up to 2 kilowatts per square meter. You'll feel that it's too hot, and at 12 kilowatts, it can cause some materials like dry timber to ignite. A bushfire can reach 100 kilowatts, and the effects can be truly catastrophic. For humans, radiant heat can cause burns from 100 meters away and cause a dangerous increase in body temperature. Radiant heat can cause the rapid onset of heat stroke. Heat stroke damages your brain, meaning you won't be able to concentrate to make good decisions as the fire arrives. Other impacts include severe damage of internal organs and death. There are some things you can do if you're caught in a fire. Cover your skin with long-sleeved natural fibre clothing, like wool. It's also useful to know that radiant heat only travels in straight lines and can't bend.
All right, I think we might stop it there,
But
Callum.
be
Having
aware.
a few tech issues with it, I think. Yeah, that one just started getting a bit jolty again. I don't know if anyone else experienced that, but it was towards the end of the video, fortunately. So it gives you a little bit of an idea of what we're talking about with radiant heat. So one of the key takeaways from it is the quickest way to improve your situation and remove yourself from the radiant heat is to have something solid in between you and the radiant heat. So a bit like the campfire scenario where someone walks in between you and a campfire, instantly it cools off, you lose your warmth. The moment they step away from it, you get that warmth back. So that just shows how radiant heat does behave in that straight line mentality, and doesn't really have the ability to bend. It does radiate through glass though, so shielding behind a window isn't going to help you terribly well. And it also brings back as to why we encourage people, if you have decided to stay and defend and you need to seek shelter, that we encourage you to get back inside your home so that you've got that solid object between you and it, whether it's the home, the shed, or something else. Having that solid object between you and that fire is certainly going to help your chances of survival significantly. Again, though, the safest option to avoid yourself from being impacted by radiant heat is to leave early. So leave before there's a fire in the area. And that way, with any luck, you won't have to experience anything with radiant heat. So what we did do is have a chat to some people who have gone through the experience of actually being through a fire. I know from the people I talk to, don't think I've met anyone yet who's gone through and actively stayed and defend their property and would happily do it again. It's exhausting, tiring, and certainly takes it out of you mentally. So just take a quick moment to have a look. And I think the one from Mick there down in the bottom right-hand side really sums up what it's like going through an ember attack. If anyone's seen the footage from Canberra back well over a decade ago now, when, or around a decade ago, I think it was, when fire impacted the outskirts of Canberra, that was a pretty spectacular ember attack there. So it's quite frightening and quite daunting to be in, and certainly something we don't recommend. So Callum, will the third and final video cooperate?
Looks okay from my end, Ben. It's worth a shot, I reckon.
All right, no worries. So again, a quick warning on this video. It's called the "I'll Never Do That Again" video. So just some personal stories. It's a very short video, but again, especially with it being people talking about their experiences, if you have gone through a bushfire before, this may jolt some of those memories. So I do recommend maybe taking that extra minute or so to walk away from your screen.
Ten years ago, when all the dams were full and the tanks were full and there was plenty of water, I probably would have stayed and I would have died.
Nothing went the way we might have anticipated.
Whatever preparations you put into place, you only need something small to go wrong.
You know, in future, I don't think we'd want to put the kids through that sort of trauma, I guess. Yeah, wouldn't put the kids through that again.
If it was my choice, I wouldn't stay again. If we had another day like that, if I had the opportunity to get out, I would go before the fire even got here.
You're on mute, Ben.
Helps if I unmute. So when we do take a look at all of that, we do want to know what that means for you. So, you know, will it be stressful? How will the heat or the radiant heat impact you with the fire? Because at the moment, when you sit here at your computers fairly relaxed and you think about what it is you need to take and which way it is you're going to leave, you can probably think about it in a very rational way, which is why we talk about writing a bushfire plan with the family with a nice clear head. Because when you do start bringing in the pressure of a fire being in the area, the heat of the day, the winds blowing, so you get that noise as well, the sensors start working in overtime, it can significantly play on your decision-making process. But what would life be without another poll? So I want to know from you, what do you think would impact your ability to make a good decision? So we'll grab that poll, we'll pop it up there on the screens. Hopefully it's displaying for most, if not all of you. And it is another multiple choice one, so feel free to select as many as you like. All right, the votes are flowing in now, which is always a good thing. I get nervous when it sits on 0 for a little while. Hopefully it means you're all still awake and with me. All right, we'll give that a couple more seconds. A few last votes creeping in. Going. And we'll wrap it up there. So let's have a look at the results here. So 90% of you is the winner and not having enough time. Absolutely. So again, the best way to counteract that is by having that plan and having backup plans as well. So if things not going to plan, Murphy's Law says, heat, absolutely, rapidly changing situation. Yeah, absolutely. Bushfires are full of rapidly changing situations. So having that plan A and a plan B definitely come into play. And that all comes around what your trigger point is to leave as well. So obviously the higher the fire risk and the more likely of you being there means that you're going to have to put a bit more reliance on your plan B, which is what happens if you have to stay and defend. So we all want to have a plan A, whether that for leaving early, what your trigger point is obviously up to you, but we do really want to give that some consideration. So we'll drop that one. So that is a really nice segue into how do you know if there is a fire, because one of the best tools that we have, and probably the tool that you've seen the most, is the fire danger rating signs. The thing that we find though is sometimes there's a bit of confusion as to what they actually mean. So of course, like all good things in life, we'll have another poll. And I'd like to know from you, you've got a 50-50 chance on this one. What does the fire danger rating actually mean? So does it mean the likelihood that a fire will start? Or does it mean how bad a fire would be if one was to start? Because I have no doubt that most, if not all of you, have seen a fire danger rating sign before. They're quite prevalent in the area. Lots of them dotted along Maroondah Highway. We'll give that a few more moments to click through. But the really great thing about the fire danger rating sign is it can play a really key role when we start talking about bushfire plans and having a trigger point. So what sort of conditions is it that we want to leave early on, especially when we start looking at severe, extreme and code red? But we'll touch on that a little bit more in just a moment. I'm going to quickly end this poll and let's have a look at the results, because it's really interesting. It's nearly 50-50 between the two. So half of you saying there's the likelihood of a fire starting, and half of you are saying it's how bad a fire would be if one was to start. The correct answer is how bad a fire would be if one was to start. So that's what the fire danger rating is actually telling us. So when we look at a low to moderate day, so if a fire was to start on a low to moderate day, we would expect to be able to get on that pretty quickly. The conditions would be very mild and shouldn't cause us too many problems. The problem is the higher up the scale we go, the more problems we get, especially when we start talking about the severe, extreme and code red parts of the fire danger rating scale. So on that severe day, we do expect hot, dry and possibly windy conditions. So if a fire was to start, it may be uncontrollable. We'll have a red hot go, but we might not be able to bring it under control. On an extreme day, also it's going to be extremely hot, it's dry, and you're going to have windy conditions. So the wind is all but a guarantee. If a fire starts, it will take hold. It will be uncontrollable, it will be unpredictable, it'll be fast moving, and we can expect spot fires ahead of the front. So an extreme day, you're getting everything thrown at you as far as conditions go. On a code red day, obviously being the worst possible rating on our fire danger rating scale, these are the worst possible conditions. And I don't think too many of you would have to use your imagination to know what that feels like. The real key element between the extreme and code red is that on a code red day, if a fire was to begin, put simply, our houses are not built to withstand a fire on a code red day. So that's really one of the key differences between extreme and code red is that the conditions are just that little bit worse, where we don't expect houses to survive a fire if it's impacted. But to give a little bit of perspective as well, because we don't want to look at all the doom and gloom, just give it of an idea. So also we're in central region for the fire danger areas. In the last 5 years, how many code red days do you think we've had? But it's always good to put a little bit of perspective around this. And already I can see in the responses, we're getting a variety of responses, which is good. So it means everyone's having to think about it. We'll give it a few more seconds and we'll see if we can get just about everyone to vote on this one. Couple more. A few more seconds. All right, let's wrap it up there. Let's have a quick look. All right, so 61% of you have said that we've had none. We've had 0. And then we've got a few in pretty much every category up to 5. So for this one, the code red came in post 09. So we've had them for 11 years now, I think it is. And we haven't had a code red day at all in the central region, not one. So whether it's over the last 5 years or 10 years, we haven't had any code red days. So they are very rare in the central region, which I think really shows how significant we hold that category. Even when we look at some of the other danger ratings, an extreme day we average, I think it's around 0.9 in the central region per year. Obviously, you know, it's an average, so it does change year to year. So when we do talk about leaving early and having that trigger point, so whether that's an extreme day, what we're really saying to you is we're asking for 1 day of inconvenience a summer, 1 day of inconvenience a year for you to leave early, which I don't think it's all that much, but we do appreciate that everyone's got different lives and it can be incredibly hard to do that. On a severe day, you're looking at on average around, I think it's around 2 or 3 a year in the central region for the fire danger rating. So even then, it's only a handful of days. Because what you're saying is if my trigger point is an extreme day, so I'll be in the area on a severe day, what you're saying is I can actively stay and defend my house in a severe fire. That's the other way of taking a look at it. So when you do start thinking about your bushfire plans or reevaluating your plans if you do have one, just think about that trigger point, because if you start off on the right foot, it'll help you plan out in the long run. So we'll drop those results there. And we'll push on, of course, to how do we find out if there's a fire in the area. So informal sources, they are an absolute joy. The only thing I'm going to say about informal sources is that the Yarra Valley Notice Board is not a legitimate place to get information about fires in the area. A few of you are probably laughing, especially those who are on the pages or any of the local notice boards. And I can guarantee that the notice board will be going wild with what is that helicopter up to. So please don't use the Yarra Valley Notice Board to get information about fires. What you can do, however, is go to the toolkit that we've provided to get information from a whole number of different sources. If you are gung-ho with getting your information from social media, please make sure you follow the Emergency Management Victoria or CFA's official page on Facebook and Twitter. That's where you're going to get all the different bits of information. They're going to come out quickly. They come out at the same time as all the other information is distributed. So please follow those channels. They are your official sources. Now, of course, we do encourage everyone to follow Healesville CFA on Facebook. They do some great events throughout the year. Highly recommend giving them a follow on Facebook. However, they won't be updating you with information during an emergency. They're going to be out there on the fire ground trying to tackle it. So again, Healesville CFA, really great for information throughout the year, but please don't use them as your one source of information during an emergency, because unfortunately they won't have the time to be able to update it, which is why the official CFA channels are there to help. There's also the Emergency Management Victoria website. We've also got the app as well. The app is hugely popular. And also you can get forecasts for the fire danger ratings off the website as well. So you can look 4 days ahead and get a bit of an idea of what the fire danger ratings will be doing, a bit like the weather forecast. Also, they can change if the weather changes, but it gives you a bit of an idea for planning. Local news and on the radio as well. So 774 ABC Melbourne is the official broadcaster for Melbourne. You've also got the Vic emergency hotline there that you can call. So 1800 226 226. And during an active event, when emergency alerts are issued, there are extra things that can be activated to try and contact people in that area. But that's a last minute situation. That's when you are going to be impacted. So not a great source of information early on in the piece. So let's talk a little bit about warnings that we often see and get issued. So there are 3 different levels. We've got the advice, which is a bit of a heads up that something's happening in the area. We've got the watch and act, which is that an emergency is developing nearby. You need to take action to protect yourself and others. Then we've also got the emergency warning that you are in imminent danger. There'll often be a line attached to the emergency warnings telling you to seek shelter, you will be impacted, or something to that effect. So emergency warning, it's all about looking after yourself at that point and getting prepared to be impacted. Unfortunately though, we can't guarantee that you're going to get all 3 of them in a row. We can't guarantee that you'll start with an advice and then you'll get a watch and act and then you'll get an emergency warning. Unfortunately, a fire has to start somewhere. So the first bit of warning you get could be an emergency warning. You may not even get a warning at all if it starts in the back property behind your house. There may not be time to issue a warning before we get a chance to get it out. And I'll go through a quick brief timeline on how that works, just to help give you a bit more background around that in a moment. A couple of other things that could pop up on the apps just to be aware of is the evacuation message and a community information one. So community information ones can pop up if there's going to be a town hall meeting during an emergency. It may pop up during an incident, just with general information about staying inside. The evacuation one is very rarely used. It's only used in very specific circumstances where during an event, there's a lull in the weather that allows for safe evacuation. The reality is if a fire gets going, the likelihood of an evacuation message going out is very low because we can't also guarantee people's safety. So please do not wait for an evacuation message. I think I've seen it used once potentially. So please do not wait for that. But to get you through a bit of a timeline, so a fire obviously has to start. That's the first thing that happens. Someone needs to actually call it into 000. So if you do see a fire, don't assume that it's been called in. Feel free to call 000. You may be the first one to call it in, or you maybe have to provide extra information for crews who are on their way there. It can be up to around 15 minutes before crews can get on scene, depending on where it is. As Captain Bates mentioned when he was talking, they have a really large area to look after. And depending on where the fire is, if it's right on the edge of their boundary, by the time they get to the station, they're out the door in that sort of 4-minute mark. It could be an up to 10-minute journey to get to where they need to be, especially if the roads are tight and they can't go at full speed. So realistically, we can get up towards that 10 to 15-minute mark before appliances even get on scene. When they first look at it and they go, oh, geez, that's a big one. Their first instinct is going to be to bring on more resources. So they're going to ask for more fire trucks to come in. At that point, once they start getting the trucks on the road, we need to start thinking about getting that message out to the community. So issuing an advice message or a watch and act and who's going to be impacted. So at this point, we could be 20 minutes in before that message is released to the public. So 20 minutes after a fire starts means that the fire, especially under those severe extreme code red conditions, the fire could have moved a significant distance in that time. So once we get to around 30 minutes in, it could be updated to an emergency warning. So in the space of that 10-minute period, you could quite easily be escalated from an advice to an emergency warning or just given an emergency warning full stop. So crews will do everything they can to try and get that information to the public as best as we can. However, one of the biggest things that we like to talk about is that we can throw all these tools at you, but nothing is better than using your senses. On those really hot days, take a moment every half hour, pop outside, take a deep breath in. If the air's not so fresh, find out why. Use your ears. Can you hear a siren? Dare I say, can you hear a helicopter overhead? Go out, try and work out what they're up to. What kind of aircraft is it? Is it a bombing aircraft? So, is it a helicopter that's got a bucket or a hose coming out from underneath the helicopter? Or, is it the AMBOs or the police just doing a patrol? Using your sensors to pick up on those little cues could be the first warning that you get. And of course, your eyes. Some of you up around Chum Creek especially have some beautiful vistas from the top of the hills, and you get really great views. So take a look. If you see smoke, find out why. Where's it coming from? Because we know that's not normal on those high risk days. So planning and decision making. So we need to try and tie this in so that we can take into account some of the risks for our local area. So we'll quickly go through a quick hypothetical for you, which is that it's 8 o'clock on a Wednesday morning, not during COVID times for argument's sakes, if we remember what those times are like. You look outside and you can see it's already hot and windy. Today's been marked as an extreme day, so it's getting up there on the scale. The morning news reports the extreme fire danger rating. You jump into your car, you shoot off to work. For argument's sake, we'll say that you're working down at Lilydale, or maybe that's where you're parking your car to catch the train somewhere. But we'll use Lilydale as our example today, right up at the end of the line there. As you jump into your car, and these really hot days though, as you're driving, you often feel that morning heat coming through the windscreen, starts warming up the car. The wind's blowing, you've got those dead leaves hitting your car as you drive along the streets. You just get that real feel of it being that really disgusting hot summer's day. So you feel that heat coming through, and around lunchtime, you stop, you have your lunch, and you overhear people talking about a fire in the Healesville area. So as you do, you jump onto your Vic Emergency app to try and find out what's going on, because we use formal sources of information, not informal sources. And you find out that the fire has started northwest of the town around the Marinda Aqueduct Tunnel bushland. So just to the northwest of Healesville. You decide to jump into your car to head home, make sure everything's okay. But as you start heading towards home, you realize that the police have the road blocked just after Coldstream. So you wind down your window, you tell them, I'm heading home, I need to get back home. But trees are already coming across the road. It's not safe for you to go in. The road's blocked. My question for you, if I may, through a poll, is around what you would be doing on that average kind of day. So it's a Wednesday, you're going off to work. So where would you be? Some of you would be working, some of you might work from home or just be at home. Some of you might be on holidays during this time of year. Maybe you're out shopping. Thinking about last summer, if you got caught out trying to return home and you couldn't get in there, would you have been prepared? And last summer, did you have an emergency kit picked for you? So clothes, important documents, photos, medicines, and also those sorts of good things. All right, we'll give that a few more moments. All right, 10 more seconds. I'm really impressed with how many of you actually are going through this poll. It's great to see all of you are still up and active. I know it's a long session, but these sort of scenarios hopefully start getting you thinking about the practicalities of these sorts of days. All right, let's have a quick look at the results here. So where would you be on your average Wednesday in summer? Most of you would be at home. and the remainder of you be at work. So no one's holidaying, no one's shopping. Would you have been prepared to spend a few nights? So the majority of you just said no. So, that's probably at least a takeaway that you can take from tonight of thinking ahead about those sorts of things, especially on those high risk days. And last summer, did you have an emergency kit packed? And over half of you said yes, which is a great result. The only thing I'd mention on that is making sure that you check it each year before you repack it. Make sure the clothes still fit. I don't know about you all, but every year when I try mine, the clothes seem to shrink a little bit. They don't always fit. So I have to try and work out what's causing the clothing to shrink, because there's no way it could possibly be made. But nonetheless, we push on. So what does all of this mean for you? What it means is making sure that we're prepared. So do we have a plan, and what is our plan if we can't get home? So do we have what we need? Do we have somewhere we can go for a few nights potentially? And all of these sort of discussions come into play. And again, that comes back to your planning. So we'll push through this one just in the interest of time, because I do appreciate that we're keeping you for a fair while here. So one of the main things that we want to try and get across through that scenario in particular is making a plan and being prepared. So know what you'll do, stay informed, and learn how to prepare your property if you're stuck in that situation. So have that plan A to leave early, make sure you've got that plan B to stay and defend if you need to. What we want to avoid is people waiting and seeing and jumping into their cars. So what happens if you have to activate plan B and your plan fails? So clothing is absolutely imperative. So cover up. Hat, eye protection, masks. So P2 masks, I think we're all familiar with where to get them from now, courtesy of the last 12 months. Natural fiber clothing and good sturdy boots. My goal is to try and make sure that none of you end up in short shorts, so your footy shorts, singlet, thongs. Please don't be that person. The only thing that almost guarantees you is to be on the news, and not for the right reason. So cover up, make sure you've got the mask, look after your eyes, look after your airways, and look after your body. So sheltering behind or inside solid objects. So this brings us back to that earlier video around radiant heat and making sure you've got a plan on where you're going to seek shelter. So, if the house or the shed was to start burning down, what do you do then? What's your plan C for personal survival? Is there something you can get behind, some big boulders that you've got near the house that you can duck down behind? A woolen blanket is absolutely key. I'm sure a lot of you already have them, but if you don't, I cannot recommend getting woolen blankets highly enough. Have them in the house, have them in the car. They are absolute gold. Op shops are always a good place to start to have a look for those. And just try and be as prepared as you can and have options. Have it documented so that you're not trying to think of these options when you're already stressed, potentially a little dehydrated, and under pressure from the situation that you find yourself in. So if you do lose the house, I call it plan C or plan O bugger. So what happens when plan A fails and plan B fails? We start looking at places of last resort. So where can we seek shelter? One that comes up a lot is also swimming pools and dams and rivers. So jumping into bodies of water. Can we do it? Should we do it? Yay or nay? Ideally, you don't want to be getting into water because what you're doing is bringing in another potential option, which is drowning. Especially if you get smoke in your airways, you lose consciousness and you're in water. So it's not the ideal place to be, but if that is your only option, then it's better than nothing at all. If you do get into a pool or a dam or a river, make sure you take your woolen blanket with you. Make sure you've got your mask, your goggle, your mask, almost call them goggles, we don't want those, but have your mask on, have some form of eye protection, whether it's your ski goggles or actual proper wildfire ones. I guess if you had to use swimming pool goggles, then it's better than nothing. And have your hat on, try and give yourself that maximum protection because unfortunately, everything that's out of the water is everything that you need for breathing. So we want to try and make sure we look after that airway and try and protect it from that radiant heat. And if your swimming pool is your ultimate plan C, try and make sure that you clear up the vegetation and keep that clear so that you get reduced amounts of radiant heat impacting you while you're in the pool. Because unfortunately, you cannot hold your breath long enough to stay underwater while it passes. Places of last resort, always something to be aware of, especially if you're traveling over the summer, knowing where your closest one is. The only thing I'll say about places of last resort is that they're great if they're right near you. So what we really want to try and avoid is during a bushfire is people jumping into their cars. Cars bring on a whole heap of other dangers that we want to try and remove ourselves from. So please don't have in your plan that you're going to jump in the car and drive to a place of last resort, because that's just as dangerous, if not more dangerous, than staying put and seeking shelter. As far as jumping into cars, we'll touch on them in just a moment because they are worthy of a quick discussion and a quick video as well. So I'll quickly give Callum the quick cue to get that video ready. But places of last resort, again, know where they are, don't rely on them, and they shouldn't be your plan A, because it's not an evacuation center, it's a place of last resort. So there may be no facilities there, there might not even be a toilet. We don't guarantee there'll be fire trucks there, there's definitely no food there, and potentially every man and his dog, goat, horse, and cattle will be there. So keep that in mind, that a place of last resort is literally just that. It's a last resort. In fact, I think Callum's off the hook because this is some videos that we, not videos, some photos that we have coming up. Now, the quick disclaimer on there is, again, these pictures may be distressing to some people, especially those who have been through a bushfire before. But what it does do, and it's only one slide, so I'll let you know when it's over if you do want to look away. So I'll click onto it now. And what this does is show the sort of conditions that you can face if you do choose to try and drive during a fire. So the dense, heavy smoke will reduce visibility to nothing, which makes you higher at risk of either driving into other traffic, potentially even a fire truck that's trying to get somewhere. You could drive into wildlife, livestock that are wandering on the roads, not to mention any trees or power lines that have fallen down across the road as well. You will not see them until you actually hit them. So we really want to try and avoid being in that situation. It also gives you limited opportunity to seek shelter if you need to. However, if you are stuck in a car and being impacted by fire, point the car towards the fire. The engine block will give you a little bit of distance between you and it. Get down nice and low in the footwell of a car, cover yourself with a woolen blanket and have some water with you, and ride out the fire front as best you can. If or when you need to exit the car, you want to try and get onto the black, so onto the burnt area as quickly as you can, because that's also not going to burn again. Ideally, if you do get the chance with the car, you want to park it either on non-flammable material. So if there's a driveway, a concrete driveway or a gravel driveway to the side, that will give you the best opportunity. But long grass is also another option if that's all you've got. Please don't stop in the middle of the road. All you're doing is allowing yourself to be hit by someone else who's driving on that same road. Turn all of your lights on, turn all of your hazard lights on, turn the car off. And like I said, stay put and seek shelter for as long as you can, staying nice and low in that footwell. So we are coming up to the last few slides, I promise. So if you do have any questions, start popping them into the screen there. The one thing that we do want to encourage is for everyone to take a moment and make a plan. So that's the first thing that you can do as a result of tonight's session. Support is available out there if you are planning to do more. So there are bushfire planning workshops that come up if you need help writing a bushfire plan. There's also some really great community fire guard groups in the area, and that has some core sessions around it and goes into a lot more detail around fire behaviour and planning for bushfire. So if you do want any information around bushfire planning workshops or community fire guard groups in the area, Callum, I think, has been dropping the email address in the chat a fair bit. So d13comed@cfa.vic.gov.au. Shoot them a note, let them know what you're interested in, and they can help you with that. We've also got the property advice visitation service, which is available to you. So you can book your time for someone from the local brigade to come out and actually do a one-on-one evaluation of your property with you, which is a really great service, and it's free. That's the best bit, it's free. So all of this stuff is free for you to participate in, and it's there ready for you to use. What I am going to do is quickly bring up one last poll for tonight because, well, what's one more? And just get a bit of an idea of how you found tonight's session. So it is a long one. There is a lot of content to cover. So I do appreciate everyone's patience as we've tried to navigate through today. And most importantly as well, there are the contact details for the local district. I'll leave them on the screen just for a moment, just so you can jot down any of these details. So phone number there and the email as well. So the email is probably one of the better options for it. Obviously, with the contact numbers, it can take us a little bit to get back to you because a lot of us are not working in the office at the moment due to COVID. So definitely email is the best option. And the team in there will get back to you as quickly as possible. We'll just grab a few more results in. All right, I'll quickly shut it off there and share those results. So thank you all very much. Some of you have taken away better understanding, 75% of you, which is absolutely wonderful. That makes me really happy. Confirmed what you already knew, great, means you're on the right track, so that's even better. Would you recommend this program? 100% of you said yes, so thank you very much. We'll take that as a tick for approval for the program, which we absolutely love. The last thing I do want to jump on is that we did watch a few videos tonight and hear a few stories that may have brought up some memories for you. You're not alone, there is help out there. So if you do feel like there was anything in tonight's session, we do encourage you to reach out Beyond Blue or contact a Lifeline. Great services that are available there to support you. If you felt that it brought up a few things that you just want to talk about, there is absolutely no harm. Jump onto Lifeline or Beyond Blue and grab some assistance from them. Because it's really important that we do take care of not just our physical health, but our mental health as well. So what I'll do is I'll stop sharing this screen.